Akadosh Boker Tov Masechet Moed Katan Daf Yomi Miami 6A1. We were talking about V'dilma Tuma Gavai V'ilanot Mibarai. So we asked yesterday that maybe the Tuma is going to be on the inside and the trees are going to be on the outside. So what does it help me now that the trees are going to be planted on the outside and it's not going to be plowed, right? At the end of the day, the Tuma is on the inside. So answers the Gemara Mesubachin. What does that mean? The ilanot are misubach. You know what misubach is? It's all scattered around. Misubach means the wedding which are is balagan. So same thing. Balagan. What does that mean? The ilanot are muravim with all the sadeh, and they're not in one place all around the border. So ever since it's all over the place, so therefore it was going to be plowed for the trees, and therefore they plowed this kevet as well. The baitema for you could answer. Ha maran. We already said in the Braita above. We already said above that you're not going to distance the tziyun from the place of the Tumah in order not to lose all of Israel. Which means, if you remember, if you're going to distance it so much, and you're going to put over here, right? Like we said, Eitan remembers, we said if a person has his car break down, he doesn't put the triangle of the hazard right beside the car, because by the time people see it, they already bash into it. Where do you put it? You put it some 20, whatever, I don't remember how many meters, right in front. So that way people see it from far, and then they know to be careful from the car. Now the problem though is, if you're going to do the same thing, right, and you're going to make a tziyun to distance from the kever so far, so then you're going to lose all of Israel. Because you're going to put it over here when the kever is over there, and then you're going to put it over here, and that kever is over there, here, and then you're not allowed to walk anywhere. Why? Because, so then what? You can't do anything in it. Anywhere where you walk, you're going to distance it so much from the kever that you're going to minimize Israel. So because of that, we don't do that. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda says, okay, we said that we're not going to say that it's going to be plowed, a kever inside of a field, unless it's going to be a zaken or a tamid chacham, because not everyone is a baki in what's going on. So Amar Abaye says, we learn from here, when you have a rabbi in the city, which is a tamid chacham in the city, everything in the city depends on him. Everything in the city, right? All the inyanim. Why? Because he's a bakin halacha. So since he knows halacha, he knows what to do, when to do, how to do it, and that's why the rabbis of the city, they're incumbent there. It's incumbent upon them everything that goes on in the city. So Amar Rav Yehuda says, if a person comes and he sees and he finds an even, right, a stone, but it's mitzriyenet, so it's got the lime on it. So therefore, underneath it, it's going to be tameh. Matzah shtayim, if you found two stones, right, which are close to each other, right? So he says, im yesh seed benehen, what happens if you have the seed between them? So you have two stones, and in between them is the seed. So then in between them is the tumah. Im en seed benehen, but if there's no seed between them, benehen tahor. So in between them is tahor. It's only the actual stones is going to be tameh underneath it, but between them is going to be tahor. Seed is lime. Lime is like a tar. It's like a cement kind of thing. Okay. Seed is what lime. It's English. No. Seed, they put it on top of they plaster it on the roofs and like that. Yeah, that's the problem. Now, even though there's no charisha, okay, even though there's no choresh, right, which means that if there's no seed between them, right, even though they was never plowed, it's still going to be pure. It's still going to be pure. But Tanya, we learned in a Braita, matzah v'nacha mitzuyena tachtea tameh, shtayim im yesh choresh benehen tahor v'imlav benehen tameh, which means that in order for it to be pure in between the two stones, it has to be that it was plowed in between the two stones. If it was not plowed in between the two stones, there's a stone on the floor, okay? If there's a lime on it, meaning a siman on the stone, underneath it, it's tameh. There's a siman on the stone, underneath it, it's tameh. That means somebody is buried under it. Okay, so now the question is, underneath 101. So now they said, if now there's in between, meaning on this side and on this side, so also in between is tameh. Why? Because then it's like what you said, the entire area was tameh. Okay. Now, what happens if it's not on the sides? It's only here. Oh, yeah, the line was a siman. That's a tziyun. Yeah. So now it's only over here, but nothing in between. Meaning, so we said it's pure. Says the Gemara, it's not true. It's not pure. It's only pure if in between was also plowed. If it was plowed in between the two stones, then it's pure underneath. But if not, no. That's what the Gemara is asking. So Papa answers, Hacha keshasid shafucha rashehen umrude lekanu lekan. Here we're talking about where the seed was poured on top of the stones, and it's also in between, which means that if you put it on top of the stone and then it starts going down towards the ground between them. So if there's a charisha benehen, means that they plowed in between the two stones, benehen tahor. I'm going to say that because of the charisha, that's why it came off of the stone, right? And it fell in between them, right? And they didn't put their tziyun. The law, but if there's no siman charisha, seed the bene benehu, so then that is the seed which is in between them. The tameh, and it's going to be tameh, which means it's just talking about logistics, the way that it's going to be, that if there was a charisha between them, so then it caused it to go down, and that's why it's going to be tahor, right? But if there was no siman charisha between them, so really be'emet, it's also going to be tameh in between the two stones. Amar Rabbi Yasi, says Rabbi Yasi, metzad echad metzuyan hu tameh, v'chol hasadeh kula teorim. If you have one part which is mitzuyan b'seed, so only that part is tameh, but the rest of the field is all tahor, right? Why? Because the rest of the field, there's no tumah there. It was only on one side. So therefore, you know that it's only on that side where there was a kevet. Shnaim, if it was going to be two mitzarim, remember, a mitzar is a border, right? It says, right, bal metzra. What is bal metzra? You've got one border on one side, one border on the other side, okay? So it says if it's going to be on two borders, right? Hem tami'im, they are going to be tameh, right? We have the little gimel over there. You have the little gimel? It's right by the little gimel. So one more time. If it's on one meitzar, that meitzar is going to be tameh. The rest of the field is going to be tahor. Shnaim, if it's going to be on two sides, two borders of the field, hem tmein, and all the rest is going to be tahor. Okay? Shlosha, if it's going to be on three, so then it says over here, hem, right? Hem tmein, the three sides are tmein. Everything else is going to be pure. Arba'a, if it's on all four corners, hen teorim. So now the opposite. All of a sudden, if I had on the four sides of the borders, right? The four sides of the borders are tameh, but are tahor, and the field is going to be tameh. Okay, so it actually changed from becoming a siman to tum'ah, it became a siman of tahara. Okay, because it's important. Why are you putting it on? Obviously, you're not showing on other fields to be tameh, because what does another field have to do with you? So obviously, if you have it on the four borders, it means that the other fields are tahor and your field is tameh. It's a code that you have to know. Yes. Okay. So one more time. Hem tmeim v'chol hasadeh kula tahora. Arba'a hem torim v'chol hasadeh kula tme'ah. Te'amar more says, and marchikin tziyun mimakom tumah shelo lafsid et eretz Yisrael. You're not going to distance that tziyun mimakom tumah in order not to lose all of Israel. We're on the two dots. Yotzin ala kilaim, af ala kilaim. So it says over here like this. V'kilaim b'chol moed nafkinan. He says, 1 second. Are you the shluchei bedim going to go out on chol moed for kilaim? Right? Remember, kilaim is the mixture of produce, whether it's going to be talking about tzitzit and also when you're planting. So here we're talking about the planting of kilaim. We're not talking about tzitzit and the wool and linen, right? You're not allowed, okay? So it says the Gemara, or minhi, we have a contradiction, or by the two dots, yeah? Or minhi, we have a contradiction. We just said that on Rosh Chodesh Adar, we're going to start mentioning about the shekalim and about the kilaim. On the 15th, according to Megillah B'Krachim, we're going to read the Megillah in the walled cities. Okay, we go out to start taking away the thorns from the path, and to fix the roads, and to start measuring the mikvehs. Okay, we do all tzorchei rabim. And then we're going to come and we're going to be mitzayin the kevarot, right? We're going to come and we're going to start putting this line to make signs on the tombstones. And we're also going to do going out on the kilaim. So you see from here that the shluchei betim, they come out for kilaim on the 15th of Adar. So why is it saying now on Chol Moed Pesach? Right? Why are we talking about Chol Moed Pesach? The 15th of Adar we do this. So answers the Gemara. One of them says kan bevachid, kan beafil. One of them says here we're talking about the things which start growing earlier. So if they grow earlier in Adar, I could already go. Right? Bachid is like lashon bechora, right? The first thing that comes up. So the first thing that comes up. So therefore, what happens is that since it already started growing, already on the 15th of Adar, I could come and I could already start taking it out and start telling the people you have to uproot your kilayim. However, though here we're talking about the afil. What is afil? Things which grow later on. It's like nashon afela, right? It's like darkness, right? That means it's growing at a later stage. So because they are growing at a later stage, you have to go out during Chol Moed Pesach, and then you're going to come and you're going to mention about it. The Chadamar, and another one says, Kam bizraim, kam birakot. One of them is zraim, one of them is the concept of the seeds, and one of them is going to be the concept of yirakot. What is yirakot? Yirakot is for vegetables, because the ones of the seeds, already in Adar, it's going to be nikar. But the ones in the vegetables, that's only going to be nikar in Chol Moed of Pesach. Amar Rabbi Yasi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Says Rabbi Yasi in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Lo shanu, what are we dealing with? He says over here like this. Lo shanu, ela she'en nitzan nikar. That's only if the beginning of the growth is not going to be in nikar before these times. Aval nitzan nikar. But if the beginning of the growth is nikar even before these times, yotzim alem miyad, which means like this. What are we talking about? We're talking about that only in the 15th of Adar or Chol Moed Sukkot, it's recognizable. So if you go out and you start telling people about the kilayim and you have to uproot the kilayim, what happens if I already found it on Shvat? Meaning, let's say whoever was over here, they came and they started planting kilayim, and I already was able to see it. It was discernible already, Rosh Chodesh Adar, or on the middle of Tu B'Shvat. Yeah, you could already see it. Right? We were running around on Tu B'Shvat plucking fruits, and all of a sudden you see the kilayim. So he says if it's already recognizable, then you do it immediately. You tell them immediately. Here we're talking about where it's not discernible until that time. So then you have until the 15th of Adar or until the Chol Moed of Pesach. So says the Gemara, why in Chol Moed Pesach you're going to go out? What was so important that on Chol Moed Pesach you're going to go out? So Amar Rabbi Yaakov, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Yaakov in the name of Yochanan, Nishum Schar Peula de Mosli Gaban. Chol Moed, the Schar Poalim is that it's much cheaper when they come and they uproot the kilayim. So therefore, because since they're not working, so therefore that's what they're doing, which means like this. In Chol Moed, you're not allowed to work. So since you're not allowed to work, so therefore these people come and they start uprooting the kilayim in different places. Now they will get some money, but it's not like a regular worker. Meaning, let's say the minimum wage was $15 an hour, right? On Chol Moed, since you're not allowed to work, you don't make the $15 an hour. It's going to be much less. So therefore, since the price is much less on Chol Moed, they would go out and they would do these things because it's part of the things which is like a mitzvah. Chol Moed, of course, Chol Moed is less because you're not allowed to work on Chol Moed. So therefore, which one? No. That's different. Sunday is your holiday. Sunday is your holiday. So when you're taking off from your congé, right, in order to work, you're charging more. Or at night times or certain times that you're getting paid more. Here, technically speaking, you want to work. The Torah says you're not allowed to work. So since the Torah says you're not allowed to work, you're not allowed to work. But if it is that you're going to work in the mitzvah, the price is much less. Why? Because some people, they don't have anything what to do anyway. So therefore they're going to come and they're going to say, you know what, I might as well do it now. So, but it's mitzvah work. So mitzvah work, you get paid less. It's like jury duty. Jury duty, they don't pay you, right? Or I don't know, I'm not sure. Right? They pay you the exact same as well. Amar Rav Zvid, says Rav Zvid, v'itema Rav Meshashia, and some people say it's a Meshashia. Shema mina, we learn from here, ki avina lehu sechar, mitrumat al-lishka yavinu. So we learn from here that since the schar poalim is actually cheaper, it's like the jury duty, the levdila of the law we just mentioned, so therefore they're going to pay the money from trumat al-lishka. It's not from anywhere else. It comes from the Bet HaMikdash money, trumat al-lishka. You're right. The Yitzhak, but if you're going to tell me it's going to come from the money of the person that has the kilayim. So whatever he has to pay, he has to pay. Meaning, if it's the guy that owns the kilayim that he has to pay, why are you going out on Chol Moed? Go a week before Chol Moed, right? Like what Dr. John Paul said, and charge a guy double, right? It's my Sunday, it's my day of congé of vacances. I've got my vacation, right? And you should charge him double. No, because he's not the one that's paying. So who's the one that's paying, right? It's obviously Trumat Lishka. Trumat Lishka is paying. The jury duty is always going to be paid less. So to Trumat Lishka is going to pay always less. Kama. So until how much is the shiur that is considered the mixture of kilaim? Amar of Shmuel Bar Yitzchak, says the Shmuel Bar Yitzchak, just like we learned over there, Kol Se'ah Sheyesh Ba, any Se'ah that has an amount of planting, Bava Mubet, 6b, of Rova, Zera Mimin Acher, a Rova of a Kav for a Zera of a Min Acher, Imayet, which means you have to come and you have to uproot it. So if it has a quarter of a Kav mixed with another one, so therefore you already have to uproot it. So ask the Gemara, we learned in the Braita, Yitkinu Shiyu Mafkirin Kol HaSeder Kula. He says, 1 second, but I thought that Shluchei Bedin would come and they would actually be mafkid the entire Sadeh. Right? So he says, La Kashya. Kan kodam takana, kan la'achar takana. What does that mean? There was a takana involved here. There was an institution. What was the institution? Listen carefully. The Tanya was learned in a Braita. Barishona, hayu okrin mashechim nifne behemtan. Do you know at the beginning, they used to come and they used to uproot the kilaim and they used to throw it in front of the animals of the bala kilaim. So that right? So what happened? So now they were very happy. Why? Right? The guy, he didn't care. He let it grow and it started growing kilaim. He didn't care. All of a sudden, I have workers which are free coming and they're cleaning my field. They're weeding my field. And number two, they take those weeds and they throw it in front of my animals. So now I'm even double happy. Not only are they cleaning my field, it's getting thrown in front of my animals. So what happened? They just started uprooting it and they used to throw it in the ground in the public. So therefore now the people were not happy because now I'm not getting, my animals are not getting fed. But they were still happy because they were coming and they were uprooting, they were weeding, right, their fields. But then they went to takana, everything was ifked. Once everything was ifked, right? Once everything's ifked, that's it. Right? Once it's ifked, now they weren't happy at all. So because of that, there was a special takana done that they didn't want the people to have kilaim, so they had to make this takana in order to stop people from having kilaim. It says the Mishnah, Eliezer ben Yaakov says, Moshkin et hamayim mi'ilan le'ilan. So you're allowed to come and you're going to be moshech, right, the water from one tree to another tree. Okay? What does that mean exactly? It says over here, okay, here it is. Yeah, okay, you can't see it in the picture, but you can't see it here, but here you see it. Right? If you want to pass it along, they could see it. Basically, you're drawing the water forth from one place to another place. Okay, this is talking about on Chol Moed. Okay, but you cannot do that. So you're allowed to do it from one tree to another tree, but you can't do that for the entire, right, for the entire field. Okay, 1 second. Zra'im shelo shatu. What about now zra'im? These are seeds of the Bet HaShlachim. Shelo shatu, that they weren't able to drink before the Moed. Lo yashkem b'moed. You cannot give them to drink during the Moed. The rabbis come and they say, you're allowed to do both. Okay, this is a shita of the Chachamim, because this is Rabbi Meir that he permits to do, right, also for a gain and not only for a loss. Remember that according to Rabbi Meir, a gain was also permitted on Chol Moed. According to what we said, a gain was prohibited, only loss was permitted. So here, since it was a gain, according to Tanakama, it was a sur. But the Chachamim, which is Rabbi Meir, he permitted both because even for harvacha is going to be permitted. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yehuda, says Rav Yehuda, if it was a sadeh lacha, which means it was a field which was very moist and it became dried, it's mutar lashkot at kol. Why? Because if not, then it's going to become hefsed. And remember, anything of hefsed was always mutar. Harvacha asur, hefsed mutar. So Tanya Miyachi, we also learned it in a Braita, Keshamru asur lashkotan b'moed. When we just said that you're not allowed to be mashket in the moed, lo amru ala bezraim shelo shatu mipnei moed. What are we talking about? Only zraim which did not have a constant water from before the moed. Aval zraim sheshatu mipnei moed. But if they didn't have water before the moed, mutar lashkotan b'moed. You are allowed to come and give them to drink on the moed. Why? Because once they became accustomed to such an amount of water, if you're going to take away that water, it's going to be a problem, and therefore it's going to come hefsed. Now, if it's going to be a field which is moist and then it became dry, mutar, it's going to be permitted, even though it's a sadeh betabal. Ve'en mashkin sadeh garid b'moed, but you're not allowed to give a sadeh which is dry in the moed. Why? Because since it's normal to be dry, so therefore don't give it to drink. Meaning if it's already normal like that, what are you giving it to drink right now? It would survive without any water because until now it also survived. So you leave it at the same status quo. But remember, the rabbis permitted both. If you remember, we already said that the rabbis permitted both. This rabbi is the Rimid, and the reason why is because he permitted it even for harvacha, which means if you're going to gain from it, it's still permitted on Chol Moed according to Shitat Rabbi Meir. So Amar Ravina comes and he says, Shemami, now we learn from here, right? Hay tarbitza. This is now a vegetable garden, right? Which is ginat yirakot, shari letarbutza b'cholod moed. You're allowed to be mizalef aleh a little bit of water on Chol Moed in order that it should come, right? Come out fruits, and you're not going to lose out from it. Why? Because if you're not going to put any water at all, you're going to lose. So therefore, you put a little bit of water. Now fruits are going to come forth. You're allowed to do that on Chol Moed. Sedeh garid ma'itama. What is the reasoning why the Chachamim they permitted to put water in a Sadeh Garid, right? Which remember, the Sadeh Garid was, there were two different Sadehs. There was a Sadeh Metunenet, which is very lach, right? So it's a Sadeh Lacha, and then it became dry. And Garid was always Yavesh. So he says Sadeh Garid, what is the reasoning why? So that the Chachamim say you're allowed to put the water on Chol Moed. The Afla Meshavele Chorpa. He says because if you're not going to give it to drink at all, what's going to happen is that the fruits are going to grow later on. And therefore, when you're going to come and you're going to put water, it's going to put that the fruits are going to come earlier and it's going to appreciate the value. Hachanami, so to here, the same thing with Ginat Yirakot, Afla Meshavele Charpa, right? When you're going to come and you're going to start coming and cooking, right? You're going to start putting the water, it's going to make it grow quicker, and that's going to be even better. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in the Braita. You're allowed to put a little bit of water on a sedit tivua. You were talking about a grain field, right? Of betabal during the time of Shemitah, but not b'moed, not on Chol Moed. So remember, until now we were always talking about that there was no difference in Shemitah and Chol Moed until now. Okay, that was the entire thing with Mishnah. Now all of a sudden we make a differentiation between Shemitah and Chol Moed. We just said marbitzin sedelavam b'shvi'it, which is Shemitah, but not on Chol Moed. So ask the Gemara, 1 second. There's another Braita. The Braita says Mefurash, Vatanya, Rabisi Memuah Meshvit, same halachot. Meaning just like by Shavit and Chol Moed, same halachot. You're allowed to put water on it. Ravuna comes and he says, La Kashia, it's not a question. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Harabanan. One of them is Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov prohibits to put water on the field, right? And he says that not only is it prohibited to put water, even ziluf, which means even arbatza, which is a little bit of water, it's also prohibited according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. But the other Braita, which says that you're going to be permitted to do it on Chol Moed, is Shitat Chachamim. That if you remember Shitat Chachamim, which is Rabbi Meir, it's always going to be mutar. Tanya Idach, there was another Braita that says Marbidin Sedeh Lavan Erev Shavit. So now we're talking about the Sedeh Lavan on Erev Shavit on the 6th year. In order that the vegetables will come out on the 7th year. Not only that, but you're also allowed to put a little bit of water on Shavit in itself, meaning during Shemitah, in order that there should be the fruits coming out on Motzei Shavit, which means on the 8th year. But you're not allowed to do it on the 7th year for the 7th year itself, but you're allowed to do it on the 7th year for the 8th year. So on the 6th year, you could do it. Which one?
At the end of the 7th year.
Erev Shavit, you're allowed to do it in order that it should come on Shavit. Shavit, you're not allowed to do it that it should come out on the same Shavit. But towards the end of Shavit, come on Motzei Shavit, you're allowed to do it. That's the general rule. Okay? Fine. Mishnah. You're allowed to capture, okay, you guys are going to have to tell me, because the Gemara is going to explain what is an ishut. It's basically a creature that doesn't have eyes, as the Gemara is going to say. How do you say it in English? The ishut? Ishut. Okay. A mole. Okay, a mole. And different mice or rats from Stei Ilan and Stei Lavan Kedarko, right? Like normally during Chol Moed, Moed V'Shvit. Okay, why? Because they destroy the fields. Chachamim say, Misdei Ilan, right? Kedarko. When it's going to be a Stei Ilan, which means a tree field, a field with trees, that you're allowed to capture them normally. But if it's going to be a Stei Lavan, which is not that such a great loss, Shelo Kedarko, you're allowed to trap them, but not like the normal way of trapping them. You have to trap them like in an unnormal way, like a shinui. Okay, if the wall broke on Chol Moed, you're allowed to fix it on Chol Moed. You're even allowed to build a wall, right? That means even though it looks like you're doing it to watch over, to keep the fruits, right, which you're not allowed to do on Shavit, you're still allowed to. So on Shemitah, you're allowed to build a wall. Okay, on On the Chol Moed, you're only allowed to fix the wall. Okay? Says the Gemara, my ishut. What does it mean, ishut? Amar Rav Yehuda says, B'riyah she'en la einayim is a creature that does not have any eyes. Amar Rava bar Yishmael says, Rav Yishmael vitema Rav Yimam b'Shlamia. Ma'ikra, what is the pasuk? Kemo shabelur temes yahaloch nefel eshet bal chazu shamesh. What does that mean exactly? He says it's a pasuk when it says to do with the yishut is noflo piton lanes. It falls down right and all. Why? But since it doesn't see it. So since which one? Yeah, the chudah, the weasel, the mole. What? Snail. Okay, so it says like this. So you're allowed to come and you're allowed to trap the ishut, the achbarim, so you're allowed to come and you're allowed to trap ishut, achbarim from the stei alavan and from the stei ilan kedarko, like normally, right? And you're allowed to come and destroy the holes of the ant holes. Okay, so it says here, ketza machrivin. How do you come and how are you going to be machriv? So he comes and he says like this. He says, he says like this. He says, so you're going to come and you're going to take it from one chor, right, to another chor. Okay, so you're going to take it from one hole to another hole. Okay, and then what happened was that they're not accustomed to it, which means that the animals, right, they're very, very accustomed to their, to their hole. So now it's going to become a problem. Okay,
it says that the ants choke each other.
Exactly, because since they're not accustomed to it, all of a sudden they start going crazy. They don't know what's going on. So it says, so they start coming, right, and they start choking each other, but they don't know something's wrong. They start. So however, though this etza only helps if the two holes are on two different sides of a river, right? Because since there's going to be an efsek of mayim in between them, they don't recognize the reach of the afar, the smell of the dirt. It smells differently, right? But it says vehu deleka gisha, but that's as long as there's not going to be a geshet, right? Vehu deleka gamla, and there's also no. It says over here, gamla is a neser, which is like wood. Vehu deleka mitzra, and there's also no on top of the river, right? A chevel, right, which has neser tzar, which means basically if you have any of these things, so then again it recognizes the smell of the dirt. And then again, this basically you're trying to do this type of like a trick in order to make sure that you don't want any more of these ants. Yes, exactly. So that's what he's saying. So he's saying here about ad kama, right? Until when? Zayin Amud Aleph, just the first line. Ad kama yu chorei animalim lechokim, right? That you're going to have it. He says ad parsa. He says until 4 min, which means less than this. Even if it does have a river, it's still the same. Okay, and then they're not going to come and start choking each other. But if it's going to be more than the parsa, right? So then if you have more than a parsa plus all the other things, so then it's going to be okay. They'll start choking each other. But if it's going to be, that means even if you have all these conditions, right? Even if you have all these, if it's going to be less than a parsa, wallow, it doesn't help this entire trick. This entire trick only helps if it's more than a parsa plus all these tricks. Have a wonderful day.